Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to work on the KMART Special. Actually, it's a KMART 5000. It says Satisfaction Always. It's a ball bearing reel made in Japan that is one of Scott's flea market finds. This is a nice big size reel, and I'm not quite certain who made it. It has some elements that says maybe it was Daiwa. It has others that kind of look like Olympic. Seems to be spinning nice enough. A little bit of bearing noise, that's expected for a reel this size. It says it has a single ball bearing on it, and that single ball bearing would be right up top on that rotor. So when we take this apart, we'll see how it's made, how to service it, and if you have one of these, for sure how to take it apart, clean it, and keep it fishing, because it says, well, satisfaction always, right? This has a handle where if you move your button in, you can collapse the handle, and as you turn that out, well, it'll set the handle in place for continued good fishing. Well, I did that just so I could put a little spray of some penetrating oil in there. Sometimes those threads get a little bit locked up. Sometimes there's dirt and that accumulate in there, and it's always good to kind of keep that adjuster working there. So we're going to start by removing the exterior pieces. This one has a push button for the spool removal, and the rest of it seems relatively uncomplicated. You have a trip mechanism here. You want to make sure that that continues to trip nicely, and as that bail spins around, it's going to hit a little ledge right here, and that little ledge is going to trip that bail, just like that. Well, I'm going to do the same thing here with that. I'm also going to put some penetrating oil onto the seams where those bail arms connect to the rotor. If you ever have sluggish bail performance, one of the first things to do is to just kind of oil these. A lot of times you just get that accumulated dirt and grease and the like in here, and if you do that with the penetrating oil, well, typically you'll have it firing nicely. Also notice there's a little bit of grease on there. All right, let's take this reel apart then, see how it's made, and we'll give you some hints on servicing this as well. This has one of those pipe cleaner kind of things that rides in that little groove there. It's to keep the water out. This one is probably beyond repair, but if you can just keep it seated into that little groove there, well, that'll be the best that you can do with that. We're going to work on the bottom first. We'll come back to that bail. I'll show you a little bit about that as well. Let's remove the handle now. The handle comes off in a clockwise manner. When I do this, I want to take my anti-reverse dog off. I just don't want it trapped under that main gear as we remove the main gear. We're going to remove the 3 side plate screws, and as I do that, we'll put those on my table to make sure they're all the same size. As I'm doing that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, and if you subscribe to my channel, please hit that notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting new videos. I try to do that almost every day, and you'll get an idea of what I'm posting. This one's a large classic spinning reel, but I work on current reels. I work on spinning, on bait casting, and on ocean conventional reels as well. And well, you'll have an opportunity with that notification button to see when I post them and make a decision as to whether that's something that you want to watch. All right, the 3 screws are out. They're all the same. I put them into a parts tray. My parts tray collects all of the pieces and parts I take off the reel, just so that I know when it's time to reinstall, where to go get them. 3 are off. We can remove this, and it's a relatively simple design in this reel. We have a reel with the main gear. This is a good time to tell you, take pictures. As you start removing pieces and parts, you want to know how these things go, just in case. And if I wasn't taking a video, I'd take a picture now, because, well, when I remove that main gear, if that anti-reverse dog goes flying, at least I have an indication of how there's a little wedge piece here, how the spring is underneath this, and kind of where that spring rests, just in case it pops. So, of course, I'm taking videos with a video camera, and that's my pictures. You don't need to take the videos. You can take just anything with a still camera, so cell phone, digital camera, heck, even take old film prints if you want. But so much of the fishing reel service is to just simply take out the pieces and parts, inspect them, and go ahead and clean them, and then relubricate them for the future. Alright, well, there's two things going on here. We have a little bit of dried grease on that collect mechanism in the back there. That's where your anti-reverse dog is going to ride. And we also have a shim washer on that main gear. Don't lose that shim washer there. Let's turn our attention over to the other side of the reel then, after we put these pieces into a parts tray. And we have a very big crosswind block. I'm not sure I even saw one like this. This one is just massive. It just looks like to be a solid block of metal there. And right in the middle of that block, well, there's a screw holding the axle shaft onto that block. Well, I haven't seen a Daiwa reel with this kind of configuration, so I think I'm going to rule out Daiwa as the manufacturer. But one never knows. If you know who the Japanese reel manufacturer in the 1970s was that made this reel, I would appreciate knowing that. Take that crosswind block screw out. That's going to release the axle shaft, and that crosswind block screw is also going to go into my parts tray. Take a picture here. This is not a straight up crosswind block. It has an offset to it where that axle shaft connects. So just make a note which is up and down and what side goes where before you start pulling the pieces and the parts out. But one of the reasons for the performance issue we can tell right away is that we have a tremendous amount of dried grease just sitting right here on that axle shaft. So I can't even pull that axle shaft through without scraping that grease off. I'm going to use a utility knife to do that, and now I should be able to remove that easier. And then once removed, I want to take a piece of steel wool and just finish the buffing and the cleaning on that so that it slides up and down easily. That's a nice solid piece. This whole reel is a very nice solid reel. And Scott found it at a flea market out in the West Coast. I don't have an indication of what the reel cost, but I would tell you that this is kind of a survivor reel. It's probably at this point 50 years old, 40 years old, somewhere in that range, 70s or 80s, early 80s. It's got the metal case. That's kind of a telltale. A lot of the reels swapped over to the graphite cases in the 1980s. So the metal cases were eventually phased out, and the graphite cases kind of took over. This is an offshore reel. It's meant for big fish, so you would use it in deep lakes like the Great Lakes. You would use it in the oceans. I think predominantly this would be a casting reel where you would surf cast with it. Of course, you can drop fish with it as well. The case inside is nice and clean, and we're just making sure all the pieces and parts get nice and clean as well. I try to go with the least abrasive of the cleaners. I typically will use a penetrating oil to dissolve the grease, and once the grease is dissolved, I try to use a cotton swab first, and then get a little bit more aggressive as it needs to be. Well, we need a socket for this one, and that socket is required because the rim on this rotor is too deep. And you won't be able to get there with the standard wrench, so don't even try this. If you were trying a standard wrench with that lip, probably would scar the corners of the nut, and then you'd be in big trouble. Use a socket wrench. We're going to try in the first part to turn that in the traditional counterclockwise. It didn't seem to want to go, so we're going to turn it in the opposite direction, and we find out that this is a reverse threaded nut. That means that it comes off in the traditional clockwise manner and it goes back in the counterclockwise manner. We're going to remove that then. It's very clean inside, and as we mentioned, we did spray all those key contact points there with the penetrating oil. And after that's done its work, I want to come back to this trip lever, and I'm going to use fishing reel oil there. And I'm going to do the same on both joints for the bail arms. And even though that's not a bearing, I'm going to oil that piece as well. Well, that piece is too big for my parts tray, so I'm just going to set that off to the side. I'm in no risk or danger of losing that there. This can just come right through. This is your pinion gear. So you can install that from underneath. And just like the other one, this has got a lot of accumulated dried grease on it. So I'm going to spread a towel, and then I'm going to use a wire brush. This is just one of those dollar store or Harbor Freight wire brushes. They're only $1 or so. Just to clear those channels out so that we continue to have smooth operation between the main gear and the pinion gear. There's also a little bit of dirt in that crevice there, so let's get that out. And then we can change out that paper towel so we don't transfer the greases to the next project. If you have a question on this reel or any reel in particular, leave it in the comment section. I'll be happy to try and answer that question for you if I know the answer. That doesn't have to be on this reel. It could be on any reel. Maybe you're working on a project and you're stuck. Maybe you just want to know a little bit more about one of the techniques I've been using. It's all fair game. If I can help you out, I'll try to do that. Okay, we're just cleaning the rest of that out there. One more time then. There was a little bit of dry grease in there, so one more time with this brush. And we'll be able to move on. We're going to take that dirty towel, get that off the bench. We'll put that pinion gear in here. And now we have 3 screws holding on the bearing. I'm a little bit concerned. This one looks like it's a different screw because it's rusted and the other 2 aren't. And it looks like it's riding proud. If I can't get this out, well, then we're just going to have to leave it. All right, well, it's turning. That's good. So I don't know why that one shows rust. It usually means that somebody lost a screw and put a secondary screw in there. I don't know the story behind it. If reels could talk, they would be interesting conversations. All right, notice that we have a ramp that goes to the back here. That's important when you reinstall this trip lever and bearing shield. And these 2 are holding the bearing in place. So that's why we have to remove the 3 screws here. Doing the same thing I did with the other one. I'm leaving those screws on the table to make sure they're all the same. Once I know that they're all the same, they're going to go in a separate corner of the box. And we should be able to lift this shield up. And hopefully we can push this bearing out now. To do that, I think I'll put that. There we go. I'll just put the pinion gear back in so that I can push it up. And sometimes, well, a lot of times, those bearings stick in the housing here because of the dry grease. I'm going to clean these off. We'll give it a try. But that dried grease is in this one as well. So it took a little bit of time to get that through. So for the next person that goes to service this, we want to make sure that, well, that they have a nice experience with that. So we're just going to clean all of that old dried grease out of there. And when I go to reinstall the bearing, we're actually going to put some fresh grease on the outside of it so that it has its slip factor. Well, you can see now it's nice and clean on the inside. Now we know that the bearing was a little sluggish and it's a little tarnished. I'm just going to grab that piece of steel wool that I have. We'll do this. So Scott sent these reels in for service. I do service fishing reels by mail. And if you have a reel that you would like serviced, if you contact me by email on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with that service and repair information. This channel was established to show you how to do it yourself. That's my primary goal, is to get those that are interested in repairing their own reels the information they need to do that. But again, maybe you don't have the time or the inclination. That's okay. If you would like your reel service, just let me know. But that's not the primary driver of this channel. The primary driver is to show you how to do it and to promote the hobby and the art of reel repair. Okay, we're just going to take care of that. There's a little bit of something stuck in the side, so we want to run our Q-tip through there so that we can get that. We've cleaned the threads, the teeth on this one. So we're going to re-grease now. I'm using fishing reel grease. I use Penn Precision reel grease just because it comes in a big tub. And I would just tell you to whatever grease you use, just make sure it's fishing reel grease. I just opened up a reel the other day and it was filled with that graphite, I guess, anti-jam that they sell for door locks. Well, let's just say that wasn't very much fun there, trying to get all that stuff off my hands. I have no idea how it worked in the reel, but the reel is in for service, so I guess maybe not too well. I just put the grease on the outside of the bearing so that the next time out it can come out a little bit easier than it did this time. I'm going to reinstall this then. We're going to go ahead and grab that. We know where that trip ramp goes. It goes right next to the just trying to get this set up properly here. And now I just need to find those. Well, we know that can come out, so we don't have to worry too much about that. Just going to grab those 3 screws, and we will see if we can't put them back. This Phillips head screwdriver has a magnetic tip. With that screw rusting, it tells me that these screws are steel. It's a perfect combination. I have a magnetic tip and a steel screw, and I won't drop them. Still curious why one rusted but the others didn't. Mysteries of life. All right. This will be our second screw in. What's nice about this is there's limited moving parts, and limited moving parts to me spells simplicity in design, and to me simplicity in design always trumps the more sophisticated multi-ball bearing reels, if you will, because there's more things to break. There's a place for them, but to me I'll vote for the simpler designs all the time. Our rotor cup goes on. There's a keyway here now that's going to lock onto the pinion gear and then go into the sides. You see the 2 sides here that are holding that in place. Make sure that you get them in the side. I've seen folks that just kind of throw that on there and have it sitting on top of those slots, and then the rotor is not going to work properly. Well, here's your first test. It's got to go on backwards. Remember what we said, it was reverse threaded. So when you go to thread this piece, it is a lefty-tighty, if you will. It needs to go on counterclockwise. And I like to do this by hand because, well, I want to make sure that it's set properly and that I don't cross-strip this as I put them on. And it takes a little while, but we got it there. And do as much of that by hand as I can. And now we'll reverse the threading on this, the throw on it, and we'll come back. And now we should be able to spin it. And I'll tell you what, it spins beautifully. It's pretty good balance to the reel, and it's working just the way it should. All right, well, there's not much more to do with this. It is an uncomplicated reel, but it does require service nonetheless. I'm going to clean out that old grease in the channel on the main gear. It's been years since this one's been cleaned. Scott finds these reels out in California, in the Los Angeles area, Pasadena area, and he's found some beauties. This one's a nice reel. I don't know much about how much he's paid for it, but I'll tell you what, it's a nice reel that will continue to go fishing for a long time to come. This one seems to be quality materials, and again, I don't know the Japanese manufacturer of this, but if anybody does know who made it, please let me know. It's a KMART reel. We know one thing, KMART didn't make it. It's what's called a trade reel. Trade reel means that there's a manufacturer behind the scenes who's going to make the reel and brand the reel under your name. Very popular concept that continues today. Not a news flash, but Bass Pro doesn't make their reels. Those are contracted reels, and that's similar to what you see here. All right, we've greased up the main gear. I'm going to put a little bit onto the back drive here. I'm going to insert that into our side plate, like that. Next up then is the axle shaft and that big old crosswind gear. I'm going to put a little or a light coat onto the axle shaft because the axle shaft is not, if you put too much on, it's going to just kind of get pushed right off when you go to install that. Take your crosswind block. Hopefully you remember which side was which on that offset. I do. If I didn't, I would go back to my pictures and take a look. I want to do two things. I want to put a little bit of grease onto those shoulders where this is going to ride. And I'll put this piece in. That's one major crosswind block. All said and done, this one will not break. There are a lot of crosswind blocks that break. This will not be one of them. And we want to take our crosswind block screw now. Line that up with the hole in the axle. This thing's kind of dancing around here. Just take your time. Patience is probably the most important virtue when you go to do a fishing reel service. If you're not patient, things can break, things can go out of order, and well, it just takes time. All right, that's almost in. Now we want to do what they did before. You want to make sure that there's grease in that channel. Again, you can put a little bit more onto the side shoulders where this is going to ride. Now look for your stud on your main gear. Your stud has got to go into the slot. So hold your main gear, take a look at where it is, merge them up. And then before you put the screws in, kind of eyeball the screws, hold the side plate, turn the reel and make sure that your axle shaft is going up and down. And you can see that the axle shaft is going up and down here so that we know we have that stud where it belongs. I put those 3 screws back in, and then the only thing left is take a look at that drag washer on the spool. Make sure that that one is in good condition, and if it needs some service, go ahead and figure out the service plan there. One of the problems with this reel is a problem that happens with most trade reels. You can't get the parts for them. So fortunately, this one is a survivor. It's been around a long time. It's held up well. It appears to be taken care of. And those are all important factors when you decide to go purchase a reel at a flea market. Condition is very important in the purchase. If you're buying a parts reel and you know that you have no intention of fishing with that reel, simply want to take it apart, use it to repair another reel. And I don't even know, this is the first time I've seen one of these. I don't know how many of these you might even find as a parts reel if you even had this reel for servicing. All right, we're going to put the handle back on now. We're going to throw the switch over for the anti-reverse to make sure that we've got that working right now. First one is the off position, and then the on position. I'll tell you what, that is one nice smooth reel. Let's just spend a moment then. I'll show you the anatomy of the spools with this push buttons, and then we'll close this one up. You want to hold this bottom piece here. If you can't, just put it back on the reel. And then you want to remove the top. I'm going to take this off now that I have it started. Hold that bottom piece you'll find a series of tension washers above. This is almost like a big little Mitchell reel. You should be able to push this arbor through now, and then you'll have a series of drag washers up top. So I'm going to just clean out that channel. Unfortunately, with this reel, they did use just plain old steel washers there. You can see that these steel washers are pretty well worn. We have a composite washer in the middle here. We have a tension washer. We have a high and a low washer here. I'm going to do what I can to see if I can't knock some of this rust off. But that's a problem. This drag will not be operating very efficiently because of the rust. You can do what you can, but again, these would probably be pretty difficult to find these days as well. So what I'm trying to find is the best sides that can run up against this drag washer here. This one clearly is not the best side. Well, neither one of them are. I'm going to use a flat file, see if I can't knock some more of that rust off. That drag button, the adjuster, was pretty well just kind of screwed down, which would tell you that the drags were not working very good on this. Do the same on this side. We'll see if we can get one side better than the other. Kind of doubting it, but this one seems to be cleaning up a little bit better here. And of course, if you have the rough spots from the rust, what's going to happen is it's going to tear into the fabric washers. So you want to do as best you can with this, to the extent that you can. This is a microfile. It's kind of doing the job. Seems to be knocking off the rust here. All right, I think we got that side about as best as we're going to get that side. All right, I just want to check below. Sometimes there's a washer down below here. That's not the case with this one. We have a lot of corrosion on this stack. I'm going to use that penetrating oil again. I'm going to use that wire brush. This is some kind of an alloy that is subject to greening. And looks like we cleared the threads there. You can see the dirt on my bench. Okay, so here's what we want to do now. We want to take this and insert that back in. Make sure you clear that little click piece before you drag. Then we have the thin washer. And we're going to take the best side up on this. Put that in. I'm going to put a little bit of grease onto that fabric washer there just to help it slide on the other metal washer. Now we're going to take the best side on this one down. That'll give us our best hope for any kind of adjustment there. Then this is the washer that is the spring or the tension washer for the drag adjuster. And then we can poke our drag adjuster in there. And we should have some play now as opposed to before where we had zero play. Tighten that up as much as you can before you put it back on. Here, get that grease off my glove there. We'll go ahead and put this back on then. And now I'm going to see what we got. There you go, we have tension now, that's good. You have a limited range of drag hold, but you can adjust now, so that's important. All right, last part then is simply to grab a clean cloth or a rag, clean up the greases and oils that have gotten onto the outside of the body, and give it a test. So here we go. We've got a nicely turning reel. You don't find that much these days. Very simple design, but look how nice and easy it is. You can imagine yourself on the shore just casting all day with this and not getting tired fighting the gearing inside the reel. I want to make sure that our bail is going to trip. It does. And as we mentioned, we've tightened up that already. All right, so that's it. That's your KMART 5000 Plus So, circa 1970, maybe 1980s, 5,000 size, large piece. So before I end, I'd like to thank all of our first responders and essential personnel, everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. Your efforts are heroic and truly appreciated. To everybody, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.